gay trailer park in Brockport, and we'd been looking for a property to possibly buy a home and move into. We only had one criteria for the home that we were going to buy into, and that is that it had inside plumbing. And you would be amazed the number of places that we looked at in the Rochester area that when we got there, they did not have inside plumbing. This place, we happened to drive by and saw that it was for sale, drove up in, but the people told us that their sale was pending. It already had been sold, so we left. About a month or a month and a half later, we happened to drive by again. The for sale sign was still there, so we drove up in, found out that the other people could not get financing, so we contacted the man, Mr. Bowen, who was going to be our realtor, and that very day we made an offer and signed papers to eventually purchase this property. We had a total of 86 acres of land. One parcel consisted of about 60 some acres, and the rest of it was a parcel across the street, way back in from the road, about 1,500 feet, that many farms had as part of the property where they would get their fence posts and firewood. And so we got the house, the barn, and this total 86 acres of land for $10,000. And even at that seemed like a huge amount of money for us to try and get a loan for. This was 1961 or 62, I believe.
One income and 4 little children.
Oh yeah, the thing is moving from a mobile home where you're pretty crowded and cramped, coming out here where we had several bedrooms and a cellar and everything of that nature. The kids thoroughly enjoyed it, especially being able to go out in the barn. Part of the barn was broken down considerably, and so one of my early projects was literally salvaging the half of the barn that was good and cutting away the other half that was not good at all. And as we're sitting right here, one of the things that was true, whenever it would rain where we are, it would be very kind of muddy and dirty. So as a family, we decided one of the first things we needed was a load of gravel to put here and eliminate that problem. Well, money was pretty tight, so we started a saving project to get enough money to buy some gravel. That day finally came. We ordered the gravel, and I can clearly remember all 6 of us standing in the front window area of the house and watching for the truck to come and deliver this gravel. That was a huge event for us at that particular time in our life.
May I add about when they took down half the barn? It was like the fiddler on the roof. Mel was on the peak of the barn with a chainsaw. His brother was on our tractor with a rope tied to wherever Mel had it tied, and so the brother was to pull forward to pull the dilapidated part of the barn away as Mel had cut the point. And I had the movie camera, and there were bats in the barn, and so I was supposed to take a picture of the whole proceedings. But I saw the bats come flying out, and I was so taken with them that I gawked at the bats and never pushed the button and took a bit of it, and Mel did not fall off the barn. Yes. Oh dear. The risks that young people take and think nothing of it, and God quite often protects them.
all the kids when they were small. One activity we used to like to do in the living room is all get down and kind of wrestle. And the kids would try to pin me down and I would try to pin them down. And we had a lot of time doing that, a lot of good memories of that aspect of it.
Another thing, we had outdoor snow skis, of course, and ice skates and things like that. And Mel had worked with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and they set up where we should put ponds and what we should plant, nuts and berries and so forth for wildlife. And the mound to the west of our driveway is sort of a hill. And so we called it the Wheat Hill because Mel had planted wheat on that, which is a winter thing. And the kids would slide down on their skis down the Wheat Hill. And we still call it the Wheat Hill. Well, at Thanksgiving time, there was snow one year later on. And I have a picture of Mel when he was 80 years old, hanging onto the bar behind the ATV and skiing. And, but as far as, well, Michelle could do everything that her older siblings could do. So she learned how to ice skate, which we had ice skating ponds and those kinds of things, and swimming. Those just came quickly to her because she had the example of her older siblings, which were only a year or two older than she.
I think the fact that the children were only a little over a year and a half apart in age, so the four of them together were so close together in age that we really didn't focus on doing things individually with the individual children. It was usually a group effort where either we were going down to the cottage or we were getting ready to go with a camping group and getting the RV all set, things of that nature primarily.
I have a story that I remember when Michelle and Kirk were little, and I don't know where the older girls were, but anyway, Mel decided to take those two on a hike out into the woods, and they were going to camp overnight, and they were going to have breakfast out there the next morning. And they vowed that they would not come back to the house with anything that they had forgotten. So off they trooped with their bedrolls and their backpacks with cooking gear in it. The next morning when Mel was making pancakes for them to eat on their tin plates, they realized they forgot their silverware, but they couldn't come back to the house. And so they found little saplings and they cut them to make a fork. And that's what they put their, that they used as their fork to eat their pancakes with. And that was just a very cute picture in my mind of the three of them trooping off and coming back.
One time I remember when we had some beef cattle here on the property, they had a tendency to get out every once in a while. And this one particular time, there were maybe 4 or 5 beef cattle, and one of them was a young bull calf. It probably weighed 600-700 pounds, so it was a good sized animal. Well, the kids were helping me round them up, and the animals were way down in the field, so I sent the kids down to chase them up towards where I was. As I watched, they got down there, and all of a sudden that bull took after Michelle. And I'm sure if it had overtaken her, it probably would have hurt her very badly. But Kirk was very spry, and I watched him, and he came running in from the side and kicked that bull in the head, and that distracted the bull, so it kind of stopped, and the kids got away, and I called them up. So that was kind of a scary moment for me, but they all seemed to work together, and we did eventually get the animals back where they were supposed to be.
I have a garden story. Vegetable garden, a large vegetable garden, and we either canned or froze the produce for the winter. And some raccoons were supposedly disturbing the vegetables. And so Mel got the idea. He put a car with the headlights after dark down toward the pond, and he thought that the raccoons were probably in the garden. So he said to the kids, I want you to walk through the garden, waving your arms and hollering to try to chase whatever raccoons are in the garden down toward the headlights, and I'll shoot it. And I thought, oh, those poor little kids, they have to be so brave. And they hooted and hollered and waved their arms. They did exactly what their dad said. Nothing came out of the garden. And so they didn't worry about getting shot at. They just obeyed their dad. Our eldest, Brenda, was just ready to go to kindergarten that year. And as I was bundling her up in a snowsuit because of our long driveway and it was cold, she looked out the window and she said, Mama, when are we going to move our house down closer to the road? The only house she'd ever lived in was on wheels in the trailer park. I loved it. I remember one time that Mel asked the kids not too much to help him on the farm because it was his hobby and he didn't want to turn them against it, but she was willing to help, and he provided her with gloves and said, would you please roll up this barbed wire, which was being taken down. And he assumed she would make a loop like this, and she thought ball of yarn. And so when she was finally done, here she had this barbed wire as a ball, like a ball of yarn, and he felt so bad that he hadn't demonstrated, and she had had such a painful time to obey her daddy. They both survived.
Well, the thing I remember about Crystal is kind of unique, and that is when she started dating Todd, her husband. The first time that he brought her home from a date was in the winter time, and it was, very late in the evening when he came home. But when he went down the driveway, he got off the driveway and went into the ditch at the end of the driveway, which meant that I had to get my clothes on, all my outside trappings, go out, get the tractor started, drive down the driveway, and pull him out. But I agreed to let him marry her anyway.
Even though they were sitting on the couch one time and they looked out the picture window out this area, and there was an opossum or a skunk, maybe it was a skunk, eating the cat food, and he was afraid to go past it to get in his car to go home because he didn't want to get squirted by the skunk. We accepted him into the family anyway. He was a village boy. Crystal was a country girl.
One Christmas season, we decided to take a drive from church down to the camp just to see how things were. When we got down there, the cottage right behind where my mom and dad's was, I noticed that the window was open up at the top, and that would let the breezes and snow come in when it would snow. So I got a ladder and got up there and was fixing that window when the people that owned that cottage came driving in. So I had to explain to them what I was doing. But the cottage had been for sale, and I asked the lady if they had sold their cottage. Their name was Betts. She said no. She said, I'll sell it to you for $800. And we thought we could do that. So I said, we'll meet you down here next week. I came home contacted our credit union, took out a loan for $800. We went down and met these people the next weekend, and I gave them $800 for that cottage. They said they'd like to take a few things out. We said, why, certainly, that's understandable. They only took one thing, and that was a ceramic cookie jar that one of the kids had won at a county fair. Everything else, clothes, silverware, bedding, everything was left there. And we still own that cottage today. And all of our children just thoroughly enjoyed going there in the summertime. And so they're very closely connected to the camp.
Which is a Christian camp, and we decided early on that family camp, the first week in July, would be a great time for a family reunion. For one thing, the dining hall was open. We didn't have to cook. Another thing, there were lots of kids their age that they could fellowship with. They ran a Bible school at that time, so that was Christian education, and athletics happened in group or either on Lake Ontario if the lake was calm, or up in the woods if the lake was wild, but you could still do play soccer or baseball or whatever like that. And so it's a great bonding time. We're delighted that this is what our family calls their favorite place. And we think it's hallowed ground.
In fact, your existence right here today actually does relate to the camp down there, because as a late teenager, one Sunday evening coming out of the evening service, one of my friends dared me to ask Barb to go for a walk. I never thought she would agree to that because I knew that she had what we called then a steady boyfriend. But I was challenged, so I asked her to go for a walk, and she said yes. And so come to find out, she had received a letter from this boy, either that very day or the day before, saying that during the summer maybe it would be okay if they each kind of palled around with others if they would like to. And so she said yes. Had she turned me down, never again would I have ever asked her to go out. But because of that, you now exist.
And I say that other than just the family camp, some of us were baptized in Lake Ontario. We've had bridal showers, we've had baby showers, we've had weddings, all right there at our favorite place.
One interesting thing with the animals, in the bottom of the barn there is a dug well, and I had some boards over top of it. But one time, it was actually on my 40th birthday, that one of the cows actually got over and stepped on those boards over the well, broke through and fell down into the well, and was down in there when I found it, looking up at me. So I called the local auto dealership and had them bring a wrecker out to the farm, and through the front door of the barn I peeled away the flooring on the first floor so the wrecker could lower the boom and I crawled down in the well and put a rope down around the cow's head and one of its feet, and we hauled it up out of the well. And as soon as its body cleared the well, I put a piece of plywood underneath the animal, and then we let it back down. And the guy that was running the record said there was going to be no way anybody would ever believe that story, what he had done that day.
So then, of course, Mel got a scratch or so on one of his legs, and it was a rusty nail. And so I called the doctor's office and said, we think he should probably have a tetanus shot. And so the nurse says, have him come right over. And I said, oh, he's in the bathtub right now. And she says, he doesn't have to take a bath before he comes to the doctor's office. Mel survived, and so did the cow.
Even though we are selling the property, we are selling it to someone we have known for a considerable number of years. And so we're still going to be able to roam around on this property, even hunt on the property. And they in turn will be able to hunt on the property we're keeping on the other side of the road. So it is very, very sad to us to think that we are coming to the end of an era where we actually own the property. But it's acceptable because of the situation that we find ourselves in. It'll still be kind of hard, but only for about one more week will we actually own this ground that we're seated on right now.
We've lived here for 62 years, and that's a wonderful length of time. And of course, Mother Nature, Father Time, has caught up with us as it does everybody else, and we are in our mid-80s, so it seems practical for us to move on.